Hello, and welcome to this webinar about collection assessment and weeding. I'm Tracy Carr with the Mississippi Library Commission. So what is collection assessment? This is looking at your collection and asking a series of questions. Is anyone using it? Um, and we're going to get into how you can find out what items are being used and what items you might need to get rid of or buy more of. Who was the collection intended for? When you are purchasing items for your collection, who do you have in mind? If you don't know, we're going to learn about some tools to get to know that. Which items in particular are being used? Which items do you need more of? What items do we need to get rid of? And that's really the crux of what we're going to talk about today with weeding. How do we know it's okay to get rid of these items? And how do we get rid of them? So we're gonna look at all of those questions today. So the first place to start is to find out who is in your community. Um, so you need to make sure that the people in your community are represented in your collection, um, not only in your collection, but in the programs that you offer. So a, a, a quick and easy way to get a demographic snapshot of who lives in your community is to head to the Census Bureau. Now, the Census Bureau website can be a little scary, but if you start not at census.gov, but at data.census.gov, there is this wonderful, pretty blank screen with one big text box or search box, and you can just type in demographics in your county or your city, whatever it is you're trying to analyze, and you will get many, many results. But the first one will probably be this sex and age demographic report, which gives you a quick snapshot of who lives in your community, how old they are, and what races they are. And all of that is important into knowing who lives in your community and therefore what items you have to offer. So if you, this is Forest County where Hattiesburg is. And if you look at, this is just the age, the sex and age chart, you'll see that there is a really high population of, I would call these young, they're not young adults, but they are youngish adult people. The from 20 to 44, that's where most of the folks are. You know, there is a university in Hattiesburg, so that absolutely has something to do with it. But obviously people are staying after they are done with school because that is the highest percentage. So keeping that in mind, the library in this community might want to focus on things and program ideas that target this population. I didn't show the race breakdown on this chart, but that is something that you need to be aware of, just to make sure that everyone in your community can see themselves reflected in your collection. Okay, so that was one piece of data to look at. Another piece of information is your circulation reports. And this is really, the demographics is about making sure you purchase materials. And Circ is you purchase them, they've been on the shelf. What's been going on? Have they actually been being used? So depending on your ILS, that's going to determine and which modules you pay for. It's going to determine the level of reports you can run. But at the minimum, you are going to be able to get information about what is and isn't being checked out. So reports can tell you how many items are checked out, which items are checked out, and which items are never checked out. Those sad, sad books. So I have just some examples of a quick report that just gives some like a snapshot of information. Our ILS has a report called circulation turnover. So instead of pouring through, and you can certainly pour through and look at each individual title to see if it has circulated, to see if it's just, you know, getting moldy on the shelf, it can quickly tell you about a collection. And now this will require your, when these items are cataloged, that they are put into separate collections um, so that they can be analyzed. So our large print collection, this is the largest collection in MLC's holdings, and it supports 3 different programs. We have Large Print Direct, which services talking books patrons. We have Large Print Extended Loan, which allows public libraries to check out an unlimited amount of large print books for 6 months at a time. And so those items can circulate at their libraries. And then general checkout, walk-ins, general public, that kind of thing. So it is a pretty large collection. And some of the items are older. So this probably is why it has only an 18% usage rate. Well, that sounds kind of crummy, but we do need to keep older titles because those are the ones that are available for large print extended loan, because the brand new things, we don't let public libraries snatch those up for 6 months at a time. So our large print new collection, however, tells you how important and how popular this collection is. So there are about 1,400 items in that collection, and they have circulated over 1,400 times. So 104% usage rate. So it is safe to say that large print books are absolutely a vital part of our collection, and we should continue to purchase them. We also can look at, we could break it down and go title by title and look at the genres to see if there's something that's not being used. But the 104% usage rate tells me that whatever we're doing fine. And just an FYI, our large print books come as a subscription. So we subscribe to X number of Westerns and X number of romance and other genres there. So our fiction collection, we have 1,199 items. I will be adding one more book to this collection just so it is a nice even 1,200. This is a newish collection that we only started in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. So it's not a huge collection, but the collection has circulated 825 times. And this report was run for the last 2 fiscal years, which is a 69% usage rate. That feels right. Most of the books have circulated. And then I also included a very small collection. Our graphic novel collection, 461 items, have served 199 times for a 43% usage rate. I don't think we've ever weeded this collection, and it sounds like it's time to. So anyway, all of this was really fascinating, I'm sure. But what can we do with this information? We can make decisions. And by the way, if you have questions about running a report, or if it just isn't making any sense to you, or you don't have time to do it, and you're a Mississippi Public Library, MLC is happy to help. If you have autographics, Verso for your ILS, that's what we have. And so it is really easy for us to go in and run reports and get data for you. All that will require is for you to create an account for me or Alex Brower, and then we can log in and do that kind of thing. If you don't have autographics, we can also do that. It just might take us another minute to figure that out. So just wanted to mention that. So with all this information about who lives in our community and what items are being used and which items aren't being used, we can make decisions. sometimes we have wonderful books in our collection that aren't moving. Maybe you just need to promote them. Maybe you need to do a flyer or a display or have some kind of program, a book club, something to promote the items that are not circulating. Um, we can also look at this data and say what to purchase. Like I said in that last slide about our large print new books, they are all being used. It's great. So whatever we're doing is great there. And we probably do need to weed our graphic novel collection and weed the regular large print collection because it's large and not as a whole, it's not really moving. And as we're getting to this, it also can tell us what to weed. So in all of this decision-making stew, the data is really important, but there is a lot of information that is not on a report. If you don't have your collection broken down by genre, if you don't have a romance section and a Western section, you're going to rely on anecdotal evidence. You're going to rely on how many times you see those books moving or that type of book coming in and out of the library. What you see, your comments from patrons, all of that is really important as well. So, weeding. What is it? It is when we remove materials that are no longer relevant to the collection. This is really sometimes people's least favorite thing. I mean, it is fun to select new books, and it's definitely fun to make a display. And it's also fun to read them, but getting rid of books is difficult for us. But why should we do it? This increases the library appeal. We all want fresh, clean, pretty books in our collection. If you, the books that you check out, you don't generally go for like yucky, worn, grubby books. You want the nice, clean, pretty ones. We also need to weed so we can protect readers from inaccurate information, science and medicine especially. Science is an ever-changing thing. People learn new things and science changes. The same with medicine. You don't want to have an old book on the shelf that gives inaccurate information and put someone's life in danger. Not to be dramatic. A a pretty collection encourages browsing. Again, we are like crows. We love a shiny, pretty thing. And I think sometimes we forget when we work in libraries how it feels to be a patron. So again, you don't want to like take this yucky book home and read it in your bed. Then that's kind of a sign that no one else wants to do that too. Weeding eliminates things that are no longer of interest to patrons, especially if there's something like fad diets or other kinds of fads in the world, like Beanie Babies come to mind. I know that's not been a fad for a long time, but I'm sure there are probably still books about Beanie Baby value on the shelf somewhere. And actually, I'm going to show you a way to check for that in Mississippi Public Libraries near the end. It also saves space. I don't know about you, but I have yet to find a library with infinite shelf space. We live in this finite world. There's only so much room on the shelf. So things, just logically, things have to go to make room for other things. And it can create space for updated priorities. You want to start buying graphic novels, or you've noticed that the Westerns are just flying off the shelves. So you want to prioritize a new collection of Westerns. So you have to make room for that. Also, I don't know which one of these I guess the appeal this story goes with, but I had visited a public library to do a presentation several years ago, and then I went back to it a few years after that. And even though, and this library is in a one-room building, kind of like a storefront, with windows are only on the front of the building. So the farther you go back into this building, the darker it gets. And so when I went back the second time, even though I knew it wasn't logical, it was so bright in the back of the room. And I was like, did y'all get new lights or something? And they said, no, we weeded. So having fewer books on the shelf instead of it being totally dark as you go into the back, light was able to come from the front of the building through the shelves to the back. And that's just the greatest example I've seen of like how weeding can absolutely transform a space. So yeah, this sounds great. Bring it on. Let's weed everything. Why don't we like weeding? Why don't we do it? It is often the most neglected part of this process. Why is that? Well, it takes time. You can't just willy-nilly, you know, shove everything in the trash can. Um, and speaking of the trash can, throwing books out feels wrong. Um, Many of us who work in libraries, we originally, um, wanted to because we love books. But books do not last forever, sadly. Um, we also don't like the feeling of making a mistake. What if you get rid of this book and then tomorrow someone wants it? That is, I think that's a really real fear. Also, confronting mistakes. If you are also the person who makes decisions about which items to buy, and then you're still at the library 10 years later, and here's that dumb book that no one liked, you have to confront that you made a mistake, and that's okay. That's just kind of how it goes. It's not seen as a priority. When you have, especially if you are short-staffed or you work in a library where you're the only person there or you have a very small staff, weeding is not a priority. When there's story time going on and there's a problem with the plumbing in your building, weeding is not going to like, oh wait, instead of dealing with this overflowing bathroom situation, I'm going to go weed instead. Obviously, you're going to need to take care of those other things first. So it's not seen as a priority. It's something that can be put off. There's also the perception of quantity over quality. Um, well, at least we have something on the shelf. Um, that's not true. Having fewer books that are more relevant and in better shape is going to attract your patrons better than stuffed shelves with something. There's also the fear that the materials might be worth something. And I don't mean to break anyone's heart, but the second you stamp it with your library's name and you slap a barcode on it, the the value has gone down unless you happen to have a Gutenberg Bible, and in which case I will admit I am incorrect. And there's the very real perception that if we weed out everything that needs to be weeded, we won't have anything left. And this is actually a very, very real concern. But getting rid of, let's say, the worst of your old stuff will be beneficial. So we don't want to weed. It's makes us feel bad. Throwing books away feels gross. But however, the mission of a public library is not to archive books. It's part of the library materials life cycle. So just like Elton John says, it's the circle of life. Books don't last forever. They are physical objects. Because we may love reading and we love what reading can do for people, we romanticize, but the book itself um, does not last forever. Um, it can be time consuming when all of a sudden you have to weed, like, oh my gosh, we just got this awesome, huge donation of something we really wanted, and we have to make room on the shelves. And then you have to devote your life to weeding. And that, that stinks. So in theory, we're going to weed continuously throughout the year when we get new books in. We're going to assess what's on the shelf and take books out. Interlibrary loan is available for items that your library doesn't own. Don't forget about, don't sleep on interlibrary loan. And I'm going to show you our Beehive resource sharing, which is our statewide ILL system, near the end of the presentation. Remember that the best predictor of future circulation is past circulation. And I will be honest, I wish this were not the case. Sometimes there's a book that's just really cute and I have trouble getting rid of it. And then I realize no one has wanted to check it out. And it's probably true that no one is going to check it out if no one has, and you've had it for 20 years. I'm not talking about like, oh, we got this last year and no one checked it out. I would possibly, give that a little more time. And remember that a collection is a living thing. It has to adapt to your community and your library's priorities. Think about your closet. You have to, every once in a while, get rid of things that are out of style that no longer fit your life. And a library collection is the same way. So how do we go about doing this? This sounds so overwhelming. Well, there is something called the CREW method. The CREW is continuous review, evaluation, and weeding. And maybe a lot of us skip the continuous review part, but we do the evaluation and weeding part. CREW uses a formula to assess your collections, and as well as some criteria, which is known as MUSTY. And you just have to love Library Life because we love an acronym more than anyone. So MUSTY is a book that has misleading information, that is ugly. And we know what an ugly book looks like. One that is superseded by a newer edition or a better source. A lot of times we'll get, the second edition of some book and don't take the first edition off the shelf. And that's an easy way to do the continuous weeding. It might be trivial or irrelevant to the needs and interests of the community, or found elsewhere. And that's where ILL comes in. You don't have to go into this blind. So the CREW method uses a formula. And I know this is dangerously close to math and has a tinge of algebra to it. And this is my face when I am presented with some kind of math situation. But the CREW method has a formula. It is a 3 numbers in a row. And so the first one is how many years since the copyright date. So it might be that if it's 5 in that position, that means maybe for health information, you want to make sure that the health information you have in your library has at least been published in the last 5 years. B is the maximum time since last usage. So that will just tell you how long it can sit on the shelf. And then C, the criteria, and that's where MUSTY would come in. And then if there's an X in the formula, that means it's not applicable in any of the positions. Like years since the copyright date. If you're assessing your fiction collection and you come across Shakespeare, well, it doesn't really matter. If you're looking at your literature collection, your fiction collection, it doesn't matter what the copyright date is. It's not like you're like, wow, 1600, we got to get rid of this. No, it just doesn't matter in this circumstance. So handily, there is an overview chart of these CREW formulas, and the link to this will be in the description of this webinar. And the CREW manual, which is created by the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. It's wonderful. It goes into detail about all of this. So just so you can see what I'm talking about with the three sections and the criteria and the years. So for example, 340 here. 5 would be years since publication date. 2 is years since last checkout, and then the criteria is MUSTY. So we'll look deeper on this. So this is an actual pretty crusty looking book from our collection. And its call number is 133.335. So in the crew manual, it will tell you about each, not each necessarily call number to weigh down with cutter numbers, but um, the the Dewey number. So 133 is paranormal phenomena. So um, and it says books on the paranormal generally receive high use and should be kept until worn. I think this book qualifies as worn. Also, if you can see it in the top corner, it costs $2.95. What a bargain. It will be necessary to replace lost and stolen titles regularly since this category includes the popular topics of witchcraft, fortune telling, dream interpretation, and astrology. High use and wear generally ensures that a fresh supply of books is available. So here's our title, our call number. It was published in 1969. Again, I'm not sure that numerology has like changed much in the last 50 years, but 50 plus, but it probably has. This particular book has checked out 8 times since 2010, but the last checkout date was 2015. And it's the only book on the subject in the collection. So maybe the only reason it's the last checked out in 2015 is that someone got to the shelf and looked at it and said, no thanks, that looks gross. So in this particular instance, we would definitely weed it. And spoiler alert, we have weeded this now, but we replaced it because numerology is, like the crew manual says, it's very popular and it's kind of a, it doesn't really matter how long ago the copyright date was. So before you're all, pumped up, you're ready to roll, you're ready to get rid of those crummy books in your collection. But before you do that, we have to look at the analysis. You need to run those circulation reports, and don't try to run a report that has your entire collection because it will be very long and you will be overwhelmed, and then you will find something else to do instead of weeding. So divide those collection reports into digestible chunks. Only do the 000 through the 200s or something. Again, you want to be able to do it without getting overwhelmed and discouraged. Um, you can also set parameters that just list books that have only circed once or have never circed, those poor things, or are over 25 years old. I know you probably don't have books that are that old, but several years ago, um, we did run a report for the items in our nonfiction collection that were over 25 years old. And I am sorry to say that the number was not 0 and the number was not 10. It was a large number of books. And some of these we did keep because they were things like presidential papers. It's not like you get rid of those once a president has we get a new president. But yes, we had lots of things, and you may too, but that's the way it goes, and that's why we have to wait. In those reports too, you can include the number of checkout, the last activity date, and the date of material, just so you have something to work with. You're also you can't just have someone pull all the ones on the report without looking at them. When you get to the stacks with your report, you're going to want to physically pull out every book and look at it and assess it. And also make a note if you're going to need to replace it. So it does take a minute. So that is, it's an unfortunate part of this process, but it does take some time. So some common questions. What if the recommendation from the crew manual doesn't make sense for my community? Well, it's just a guideline. No one's going to go to jail if you don't absolutely apply the crew method to every single thing in your library. You know your community the best. If you live in an area, like if you live in Belzona, you might have more catfish books than another library, but that's because you're the catfish capital of the world. And what if the crew method really works for you and there's no formula for the call number? Just use your best judgment. And your library might want to create its own default formula for those kinds of titles if you have some kind of special collection. Other questions are, what if we get rid of it and then someone wants it? This is the thing that haunts us. If you're on the fence about a title's availability, you can check Beehive resource sharing system. And I am going to see if I can manage to switch over to Beehive. In theory, we're all looking at the Beehive resource sharing login page. And you don't even have to log in to use it. The default setting is for all, well, it should be for all Mississippi libraries, public libraries. Let's search for John Grisham. This is going to get us a lot of things. How about the boys from Biloxi? Sorry. And you want to keep your large print book, but it's all busted up. Okay, well, there are 13 other libraries that have the large print edition. So you're safe to get rid of it or buy a new copy or whatever, but you're not, the fate of the book and the fate of every Mississippian to enjoy the book is not actually on your shoulders. You can get rid of it and rest easy at night. So just like I said, you don't have, there is a login over here, but you don't even have to use it. If you just want to search specific libraries, when you click on this little, it's select resources, and I think it looks like a little pile of cookies, but it also kind of looks like a barrel or coins, whatever it's supposed to be. If you only want to search a few libraries, like the ones surrounding you, like if you're in Jackson and you want to search the Madison Library and Central Miss, you can just search those two libraries together to see what is available nearby. So that is just a quick tour of Beehive. Oops, there we go. If you have any questions about weeding or running those reports or really anything at all, let's see if I can switch back again to presentation. All right, all of that just to get to this page. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. My email address is tcar@mlc.lib.ms.us, or you can call me at 601-432-4450. And again, if you have any questions about weeding, if you need training, if you need help with your reports, or if you have questions about Beehive, or really anything else, please give me a call. Thank you.